Now then everyone, so in today's video I'm going to be looking at vintage lenses as budget alternatives to buying a E-mount, in this case for the Sony FS100 Cine-Camera, to buying an expensive E-mount camera that these cameras are designed for. So again, in this video we're looking and talking about the FS100, which I picked up in last week's video for a really good price on eBay. If you've not watched that video, click the link above my head right now and check that out. So ultimately, the reason I'm making this video is, I'm sure you'll already know this, but ultimately when you buy a camera, that's expensive anyway, and the next biggest cost, and sometimes can cost more than the camera itself, is the lenses that you choose to go with. Every camera manufacturer out there has its own mounting system, and there are ways that are around this for adapters and things like that, but the Sony FS100 is an E-mount Cine camera, which uses the Sony E-mount system, which is on all of their newest cameras, up to today's video anyway. So yeah, I wanted to show you the way that I'm going to be adapting lenses to this system, and some of the things I've already tried out and ultimately failed with and spent a little bit more money on than I'd like to, and where I'm going with it in the future. So just a note, I am actually in the process of having a stock 18-55 OSS kit lens, Sony's kit lens, sent out. I bought that secondhand, and ultimately that is going to be the main driver probably on this camera, because I do want to use it to vlog with as well in my sort of room setup that you can see right now. And I also want to test out this thing's autofocus system, because I've talked about the Panasonic S1's autofocus quite a lot. So I want to kind of compare it with a 9 years older Cine camera as well. But before I bought that lens, I have tried out a few things, and the first thing we're going to look at is the most cost-effective, in my opinion, way of adapting some vintage lenses to this Cine camera, and that is by using these things right here. This is an M42 adapter to NEX, which essentially means that I can adapt the thread style M42 lenses to this NEX system. So the two lenses that I am currently using, this 50mm prime, which is a 50mm f2.8, and also this 35mm f2.8 prime as well. The 35mm prime that I've got there is a Soligor one, and it's not it's quite soft, it's not the sharpest of lenses, and so again, that's something to bear in mind. What you want to do is look at some vintage prime examples, do a bit of research about it, and find the system that suits you. I've got the M42 primes purely because I already owned them, and so as soon as I found the dummy adapter here, I knew that I'd be able to get up and running with this Cine camera quite quickly. But obviously there's also the Canon FD mounts out there and other vintage primes and vintage lens mounts that you can adapt to these systems. At the same time as trying out these vintage lenses, on eBay at the moment there are some really good prices for Canon EFS lenses, and because the Sony FS100 is an APS-C sized sensor, you can adapt Canon EFS lenses to this system. Now EFS is obviously Canon's APS-C size lens lineup, and they are slightly cheaper than their full frame lens lineup. So I managed to pick up a 17-85 stabilized lens for £53, I believe it was. Again, secondhand off eBay, and I bought a really cheap EF to NEX adapter, again off eBay, for £25. Now I hoped that the autofocus was going to work with the adapter and the lens, but unfortunately the camera wasn't recognizing the system. It allowed me to adjust the aperture digitally, and it would tell me the aperture on the camera, and it would do that, but it wouldn't engage the autofocus, which was a little bit annoying, but again, something which I kind of dreaded would happen, but I wanted it to work. Which means that you can adapt Canon glass to this camera, but with the two lenses, the EF lenses that I tried out, neither of them was successful with using the autofocus. This goes back to the last thing I really want to talk about, which is when you are trying to kit these Cine cameras out on a budget, you could actually end up spending more than it would have cost just to have bought a stock E-mount lens, especially when it's a lot of the time it's trial and error if there's not much reading out there about these kind of things and what can be adapted to them. So just bear that in mind. Sometimes it can just be easier and cheaper to go straight to the lens system that's on there. So I don't always see the M42 mount actually addressed in many other YouTube channels out there. So if you guys have come across M42 adapters or used M42 lenses before, if you've got any recommendations for me to check out as well, feel free to comment in the comment section below. And if you've not done so already, please like and consider subscribing to my channel, as that always helps out as well. So yeah, I'll see you all in next week's video. Thank you very much.